I'm Vincent Mano. I am Provost and Dean of Faculty and a Professor of Engineering here at Olin College.
I'm Rayanne Butera, and I am the Dean of Student Affairs here at Olin.
I'm Logan Davis. I'm a senior.
I'm Allison Wood. I am an assistant professor of environmental engineering.
So I'm Dakota Nelson, a senior.
My name's Katrin Lynch. I am a professor of anthropology.
I'm Mel Chua. I'm Olin class of 2007.
I'm Claire Kincaid. I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering student.
I'm Meg Liederbach. I'm a senior at Olin College.
I'm Dennis. I'm a senior here.
I'm Adam Selker. I'm a first year at Olin College.
My name is Alexandra Kozo-Strong. I'm an assistant professor of systems design and engineering.
My name is Aditi. I'm a senior.
So my name is Richard Miller. I'm the president of Olin College.
The myth of apolitical Olin, which has been ingrained in all of us.
Right now, there's definitely no explicit integration of politics into Olin's curriculum.
I think that politics is largely absent from the formal education here. We tend to, in my experience, shy away from it in the classroom.
But certainly at a curricular level, politics is almost completely missing.
This isn't a political place.
I think there's not a focus put on politics at Olin, broadly defined.
Politics, per se, doesn't play a huge role.
Attempting to remain neutral by perpetuating this myth of apoliticism just opens the door up to a lot of problems. It encourages this kind of feeling that politics is a dirty subject to talk about in the first place.
Politics is the backdrop to everything that we do. Politics is an expression of a person's worldview. And everything that we do, most of what we do in some way relates to politics.
To me, it doesn't make any sense to think that you could work on an engineering problem without thinking about all the social, political, economic context around those problems.
What does it mean to support our students when they go out and try and change the world? And to change the world, you have to interact with politics.
It's important as an undergraduate student to start to figure out where politics, or anything else actually, fits in to your life as an individual person and into whatever academic area you study. And I think it's really important for us to be providing the opportunity for students to investigate what politics means to them.
I think politics should have a constant presence at Olin.
I think students are uncomfortable expressing political opinions because of this idea that we all need to like each other and we all need to be productive together. So the sort of sanctity of our working relationships with each other in this environment causes us to behave as students in ways that tend towards apoliticism.
We're so small that we're really conflict averse because we know that we're going to see that person in our next class or in the dining hall. And if we create any sort of discussion that turns negative about politics, we're likely to create something or a rift with that person. And I think that scares us.
But if we can't model engagement across difference in a community of 400 people, then we're really in trouble in our society.
There is worry about how to talk about politics and remain inclusive and constructive.
So last year, I was co-teaching Design Nature, and it was the day of the Paris bombings. So they actually happened while we were in class. And it was one of these moments where one of the students pointed this out to me, but I felt really debilitated as an instructor. Like I didn't know what to do. It didn't fit into the context of the course in that point. Students were working. Some students may have thought that the environment was now not supportive of them if I had brought this up, but I really just didn't know what to do in that situation. And I remember spending weeks and weeks after trying to play it out in my head, what could I have done to support this discussion? How does this translate if you were to go out into the world and do this? And I think that's also where politics can really begin to come in a way that's not controversial.
I think there can only be so much growth that you can do individually. So much more growth comes from a community-based effort. If we were to just talk about it more as a community in terms of how it will affect our practice in the future, I think it could work a lot better.
Coming together as a respectful and trusting community where we can agree on some perhaps ground rules about respecting each other, which things that are already built into our honor code and our institutional mission and vision, so that we know that we can have disagreements and walk away at the end still respecting each other and even still liking each other, still being able to work together.
How we need to just open up the conversations more and allow for more dialogue and allow for more voices to be heard.
And I think that because the Olin administration has been pretty neutral, students have thought that they should also be neutral.
Because with the institution attempting to just remain apolitical all the time, you almost feel guilty talking about politics.
This Board of Trustees has a very strong belief that in order to meet our mission of creating excellent young engineers, that we need to help them develop their own ideas and to be creative and to take ownership for what they do. So we deliberately work to try to create opportunities that give autonomy to students and hope to motivate them to work on problems that matter with people and develop their own independent views on how to go about doing that.
I would say ideally Olin would end up staying out of it, and people would talk about it of their own accord. Whether that actually happens is another question. There will always be people who want Olin to be more involved in politics. There will always be people who want it to be less involved. But I think the balance we have right now is pretty good.
The issue or the risk with having a kind of more top-down approach to politics and education, especially at Olin, is that it has to be very carefully handled in a way that doesn't push a viewpoint. Whereas when it comes kind of bottom up from the students or from the faculty on their own, then it would be much more this is something I'm interested in, and it's much more kind of personalized than it is institutionalized.
Olin being so young, I think we don't have a lot of that experience, and we're just now developing kind of where we situate ourselves in a lot of conversations. One is politics. What do we as an institution think is important to say or not say about something, or stances to take or not take?
I read the MIT president statement right after the first proposed executive order, and the president of MIT wrote such a beautiful statement talking about the values of MIT and how we as people don't stand for this. And I can see that there's a difference between what the MIT president can say from his position in a several hundred-year-old institution that is positioned in a certain way in our economy and society that's different from Olin College. So I wouldn't expect Olin to be able to make the same kind of statement.
The administration also have to balance a lot of different stakeholders. The Board of Trustees and the student body and the students' parents have very different political opinions. And keeping all of those people happy is the job of the people who work here at the college. So that also informs the decision around apoliticism.
Olin, in fact, from a legal point of view, is a nonprofit corporation in Massachusetts. It has an owner. Those are the Board of Trustees. So Olin is actually owned by about 20 people who have legal responsibility for everything that goes on here. So it's not my school. It's not your school. It's their school. The federal law on what it means to be a private nonprofit organization like Olin College require that we remain politically neutral.
Olin's institutional values and the personal values that all the students and faculty and staff know about and are part of the institution are compatible with a rich political discourse.
So being dictatorial about what's right and what's wrong is not consistent with the mission of the school.
The Olin mission statement refers to training engineers to use technical expertise for the good of the world. Given that it says for the good of the world, that's a call for us to understand what's for the good of the world and to engage in conversations about good.
I don't know, I guess it all depends on how you define good and doing good in the world.
Our mission is calling out an opportunity and an obligation to engage in conversations about social justice.
I think we have to be very careful when we say something, well, that violates our shared values. As far as I'm concerned, our shared values are the institutional and personal values that we know, that are explicit. And after that, it's really up to the human interpretation of how those reflect on the specific things that they believe and do.
Given that our mission is to support graduates who are going to have an impact on the world, who are going to change the world, I think that's where the politics and that ideal could come up, is sort of saying, how do you support someone who wants to be a change agent in the world or in their career? So we could talk about that, but I don't think we're there yet.
Because Olin has talked so much talk about that general kind of responsibility, they're more beholden to it, because they sort of sold all the students on this idea of, we're here to innovate and change the world.
I think that if Olin wants to do what it says that it wants to do in terms of creating engineers that change the world, they have to create engineers that think critically about the world, which means thinking about things in terms of politics.
When I think of politics, I think of the power relations in society, so pretty much everything is political.
I don't think politics was ever an uplifting word or concept in itself, but at least in my experience, my life so far, I can't remember a time when it's such a depressing and dark word, because it implies all sorts of things. It certainly doesn't imply progress.
Being apolitical says status quo is what I would prefer. The status quo sucks for me and lots of people like me in multiple ways. But I'm a young woman of color in a STEM field who also identifies as disabled. For me, being political is also in a way saying, I would like society to change, and I will take some work to see if I can make it better.
It doesn't imply a positive mindset. It doesn't imply happiness. It implies doing nothing. It implies fighting. It implies yelling. It implies uninformed decision-making.
Being apolitical is merely stating that changing the status quo is not worth the energy and effort that it would take to do it. So in some ways, it's a tacit endorsement of that status quo.
There's no such thing as an apolitical stance, an apolitical action or decision. There's no neutral, and if you say you're apolitical, that basically means I prefer the political situation that will happen if nothing changes.
If you claim not to take a political position, that in itself is taking a political position.
Well, everything that we do as human beings is affected by the social constructs under which we live. And all of those social constructs are inherently political. They have to do with race, they have to do with gender, they have to do with schemas of privilege, right?
Part of the everything is political thing, right? My decision to talk with you for your documentary project is a political act, like all acts are political. And I know the words I'm saying are being recorded. So I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about what I might want to say, and also who I am, because it matters whose mouth the words come out of. I think one of the interesting questions would be, what is it that people didn't say, right? Because it's a difficult subject to talk about, and so to some extent we are going to be skimming the surface and putting on some kind of performance of what do I think is safe for me to say in this context and what effect do I want to have.